Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for deciding to be here today. Today is the second Femme4STEM event, and my name is Kayla Lim, and I'm one of two founders of this project. In partnership with the Ronald Reagan Citizen Scholar Institute, Femme4STEM is a CSI project that my partner, Ria Manimaran, and I have worked pretty hard for the past 2 months to see happen. Working hand in hand with high school students to create positive societal impacts, Royal High School Citizen Scholar Program encourages students to design a project that will improve the lives of those in their community and further beyond. We decided what better way to celebrate our love for more involvement between women in STEM than to host this event during the first week of International Women's History Month, which is this week. That's why Femme4STEM was born with these values in mind. Introducing students, especially young women, to female professionals and providing a forum for questions with no bounds. And without further ado, we would like to introduce our featured panelist for today so we can all get to know her a little bit better.
All right, so our panelist for today is Erin Holchuk. Her current work experience includes biomedical engineering as well as medical device design. She's also worked as an oil field drill bit engineer, design engineer for insulin pump disposables, as well as tissue heart valves, and a process engineer for electronic materials. Erin is actually also an artist, which is why we figured she would be perfect for today's topic, which I'll let Kayla elaborate a little bit about.
So the topic for today's event is striking a balance between creativity and objectivity in STEM. I'm sure that we've all struggled with finding creative solutions to our problems, or sometimes with finding a creative outlet to express ourselves. And I also know how much creativity can interact with logical problem solving, which is why we chose this topic. So before we start off our interview portion of the event, I just want to emphasize the importance of the opinions of everyone watching this webinar right now. We have the Q&A function enabled, so throughout the event, please send in your questions and comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. After the interview round is over, we'll address everything that is piled up in the Q&A box. To begin, I'd like to ask Erin this question. How do you express your creativity?
Everything I do. From having children to what I do at work, through engineering, directly through art, cooking. I feel like everything I do is an expression of creativity, and I feel really fortunate because we're born creative, but a lot of times it gets blocked as we get older, and stresses of daily life can cause you to shut down and can block those channels. So I'm really fortunate that I have so many avenues through which to be creative. I can be more specific if you'd like.
Well, I just wanted to ask, so do you think that you were pretty artistically inclined ever since you were a kid, or was it something that you kind of found a passion for later in life?
I've always been creative, but also at the same time, very interested in how things moved and how things were made. So that's where the mechanical engineering comes into play. So both, like I was making art constantly, sewing, drawing, painting, Play-Doh. Yep. So my entire life.
I also wanted to ask, I think it's really interesting how you said that creativity can sometimes be blocked. And I mean, me personally, I feel like I'm not as creatively inclined as others. So I wanted to ask kind of how you think are ways to kind of unblock that creativity.
One major creativity killer is our inner judge censoring us, that inner voice that says, oh no, that idea is, not worthwhile.
Definitely.
So I think you can be really conscious about bringing creativity to any endeavor and making an actual space for the brainstorming process, or the, I guess brainstorming process is what I would call it. Sorry, just 1 minute. We've got Disney.
I'm so glad to see that somebody already sent in a question. It's good to see.
Oh, great. So the brainstorming process can apply to almost any project you set about doing. You allow yourself time to just like loosen up, let any idea come in whatsoever, no matter how outlandish. That's the creative process. There's time after that process to winnow down, eliminate ideas that don't really work. When it comes to, say, art, the initial brainstorming period would be like when I make a sketch, I don't draw one perfect line. I draw many, many lines and then use an eraser to get rid of the lines I don't need. So I think that translates to many different aspects of our lives, having that brainstorming process, time, and then time to, use your judge and get rid of ideas that don't work.
That's great advice. Thank you. Sure.
So, like something that Femme4STEM kind of concentrates on is experience in the workplace. So when it comes to working and being employed under others, it's kind of natural that there isn't always limitless freedom when it comes to carrying out tasks that your boss asks you to do, something like that. So to touch on a main theme of today's topic specifically, how do you use your creativity in the workplace or maybe previously?
Okay, that's a great question, because being so creative, when I first got a job right out of college, it was disheartening to see that my creativity wasn't really desired. I still found ways. So thankfully, as a mechanical engineer, I get to work with CAD software. So just purely working with 3D software or even 2D CAD software, computer animated drawing, I get to be creative. Even if it's a drill bit, I'm getting to draw and work in, it's visual work. So that was creative. There are endless ways you can figure out how to communicate your ideas. You can be creative in that way, because it's really important to be able to communicate with others. And it's not necessarily natural for engineers to be creative in that way and be able to communicate in that way. So I would say I learned to be creative in how I got my message across. If I really wanted someone to listen to my design or my reasoning, or
Mm-hmm. And when it came to finding out or like realizing that you had this interest for mechanical engineering as well as art, did you ever feel a little bit conflicted that you kind of had to pit these two things against each other? Or did you know for a fact, I want to find something that blends the two of them, if that makes sense? I can elaborate a little bit if it doesn't.
that makes perfect sense. So I knew I would always do art no matter what. Just I live and breathe art. But then in high school, it made very much sense to go toward engineering because I had good grades in math and science. And this was in '94 that I was looking for college. I graduated in '94 from high school. And there were a lot of opportunities for women because there were so, colleges were looking for women even more. So, and lost my train of thought. Oh, so I had a vision. I had a vision that I would be an engineer for 20 years and then be able to support a career as an artist and have a family in there somewhere.
That's fun.
That's pretty much how it's worked out.
Mm-hmm. That's almost exactly what my dad had advised me on growing up. Is he was like, I feel like there's definitely a stigma around art jobs as well as like the career of an artist. And so he told me, he was like, I want to make sure that you are secure. He was like, so how about you do computer science? And then once you've got it made, you can sell me paintings on the side. And I was like, I'll think about it.
I don't think you have to put your art dreams on hold, but just the way our society is structured right now, in our economic system, you don't have as much security as an artist as you do in other fields. But I would say, if you take the technical route, don't let it like kill the creativity, keep it alive.
All right.
So kind of going off of that, I know I have a lot of friends who are artists. I mean, Rhea is an artist herself. And I also know that sometimes they can feel restricted in school and extracurricular activities from showing their full creative potential in education or whatever they do outside of school. So we wanted to ask, since you're an artist and an engineer, did you ever feel that you were restricted on your creativity or ability to be an individual in the workplace or in your art career?
I definitely feel like I've had to compartmentalize for the most part. Like I'm trying to think about different positions I've had. And for the most part, they've been purely technical. And like I mentioned before, I would use creativity in how I communicated, like making a super flashy PowerPoint, with lots of images and labels. And that became like, I would get a real like burst of good feeling from being creative in that way. And but for the most part, yes, I would have to have my technical hat on at work and then go home. And if I had extra energy, do art as well.
Was it draining?
It sure can be. I think you have to find ways. You're not going to be in every job you have forever, and you're going to learn something from any position you have. So I would say when you're starting out, you may find something that feels like drudgery, but you're going to learn from it no matter what. At the very least, you'll learn that you like it or don't like it. So if it becomes draining after 2 years, I mean, if it's still draining after 2 years, then I would say move on. But you really do have to put some time in to figure out, if the draining is going to pay off, are you going to get something back from it eventually? I can't remember if I answered your question. Is it draining?
Yeah.
Can be.
Definitely.
I think I think it's also very important to be able to recognize when it becomes too much, I guess. So how did you recognize that personally?
Well, I was really lucky because this is going to sound really old-fashioned. Please don't cancel me. Followed my husband's job because he made more money. And we knew eventually that I would stay home with kids, so it made more sense to follow his career. So I got pretty tired of the drill bit situation. I just felt like I wasn't using my skills to their fullest ability, and I wanted to be able to impact people in a positive way. So Shane's first move, we were in Texas, then we went to Tennessee, and there was a biomedical engineering program there. And so I said, that's it. That's what I have to do. I'm doing that. So I didn't have to stick around long enough to make the decision on my own. It was made for me. But that happened several times. And that's how I met Joan, was because I pursued the biomedical engineering degree. And then they did ask me to do a PhD. And I was really tired of the politics in academia. And I was ready to leave. And I found the position at Medtronic where Joan worked. And it was like my dream job. And it just happened to be where my husband was moving for his job. So again, the decision was made for me, but I think I probably would have said, no, I don't want to do a PhD. But anyway, so I would say I had the benefit of the decision being made for me. I didn't have to say something was too much very many times. but the upside was it was really fun to find new jobs and do different things every time.
Yeah, just looking at like your work experience, I was like, this is so diverse and so many different experiences. Um, so I kind of want to diverge a little bit away from talking about the workplace. So seeing that you're an artist currently and that you have been your entire life, can you give us an idea of how you explore art in your daily life now specifically?
Sure. I used to think art could only happen when inspiration hit. I also really used art as therapy for many years. Like if I had too big of feelings, then I would draw or paint those feelings and didn't have to use words. So it was kind of like art was only used very specific special times. And now I paint or draw every single day, and it's like working out. You don't always have to feel inspired to improve on your artistic skills. And the way I explain it is, so because I draw so regularly, it's just like if you work out regularly, if you lift weights regularly, you're strong in that way. And if you back off for a little while, then you lose strength. So, you know, there's the technical side of being able to draw and paint, but then I would call that just the language through which I express my creativity. And it's like I can speak the language of art now and express my ideas that much better.
Did you ever, when it came to art, did you ever find yourself feeling compelled to learn like the technical skills? Because for me, I really resonate with something that you just said, is where you said it was just like this form of emotional expression. Ever since I was in middle school, my mom would make me mad and I'd go draw on my sketchbook, something like that. And so I
Awesome.
remember I stayed away from art classes all throughout high school because I didn't like being told what to do with my art. I kind of wanted to do it for myself. So I haven't really explored the technical skills when it comes to art, but I wanted to ask, what about you?
When I lived in LA, I did take an oil painting class, and then I didn't pick up, and I loved it, but I didn't pick up oil paints again until after I had kids. And it was a very difficult time in my life. You might even call it an early midlife crisis, even though I was late 30s, but I don't consider that midlife yet. And I sought out an art instructor, and it just so happens now we've known each other 5 years and we paint every week at my house together. So I've learned a lot of technical skills from her, and definitely I've grown under her tutelage. And it was important for me to learn the technical skills as well. And like I said, that's like the language now. I know the language and I can speak it.
Perfect.
I think that's a great segue into our next question. So we wanted to ask, since you did have to experience the technicalities in a STEM career and kind of how that shaped maybe some parts of your thinking, in what ways has your STEM career impacted the way you approach life now? And that can be daily life or art or any long-term projects or even your career. It's a pretty loaded question.
It's a great question. Well, it's probably influenced it in a lot of different ways. I think I'm really grateful because there's a level of professionalism that you learn to rise to when you work for a company. And it's a beautiful thing to be at a company and you're in an R&D group and you're working with these beautiful minds and you can all, there's this synergy. And I remember sitting there and thinking, I am so grateful to be sitting with these people at this time. So I would say learning to, something that I have taken away is learning to be in a situation, be very present, understand what every person around you is bringing to that situation and how you can work together. And you don't have to just be an engineer to learn to work with people that way. But I guess learning to work with people would be a big one. Being analytical, of course, but also learning when to shut it off. One of the biggest things I've had to learn that I can apply to regular life as well is when to turn off the analysis, when it's no longer going to bring a beneficial impact. Let me explain that better. I'm really detail oriented, so I can get nitpicky, but sometimes you have to zoom out and you have to understand, what's important and what's not. And so I think having to learn that as an engineer has been really important in regular life as well.
Yeah, oh my gosh, like I feel like you and me might be twin flames. That was just completely something that I struggled with, was that for me, I guess, okay, when I program, of course, no one wants to like deal with a bug in their code. So you want to keep nitpicking, you really got to figure it out. And so that translating over into art, it's almost the exact same thing. When you can't get that line right, you have to keep doing it over and over and over. And so to hear that, like your advice on like turning off that analytical mindset, it's really interesting, because I think it's a lot more difficult than people would think, because your brain just becomes wired in this way to approach things. And so it's just so different to like have to switch it off, honestly. So interesting.
No, I completely relate to what you're saying. And I mean, I have to think a lot about brain chemistry too. You get a dopamine hit from the payoff when your analysis works, or when you finally get that line right. So it's like there's this positive reinforcement for being that driven and that focused and that analytical. But then it's not always needed, or there's not always time or money to take that much time and energy. So you have to learn to balance.
Exactly. All right. So I guess with that, we can conclude the interview round of the event. And thank you to everybody. Or first off, I want to thank Erin. She was super insightful when it came to everything that she said. And again, thanks for being flexible when it came to answering the questions. But now I'd like to handle the questions that are that have piled up in the attendee Q&A box. And there's quite a few, so I'm excited. So we'll start off with an anonymous question, and it asks, is there something you do to tap into the creative side of you? Are there certain activities that increase your creative output? And I'll let you take it away.
Oh, sure. Yeah, music for sure. Absolutely. I can get so lost in music, and it really definitely gets the good, brain waves going for creativity. I would say music. It's important for me to kind of take a break from whatever I was doing before and maybe go for a walk or do some yoga or do something to like clear my head and make room for creativity.
When you mentioned music, was it listening or like actually making music?
Oh no, I can't make music. But listening. Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
So our next question is also anonymous, and this person's asking, what is Medtronic?
Oh, so sorry. Medtronic is a medical device company. They made the first pacemaker. They make implants, like spinal and knee and hip implants. And then where I met Joan Clark, Miss Clark, was a division that created insulin pumps for diabetic patients. And then right after that, I worked for a different division in Santa Ana, and they made tissue heart valves. So they make all different kinds of, they make stents too.
Wow, that's really amazing. Can I ask specifically what you worked on in these, I guess, areas of biomedical engineering?
Sure. Probably I would say the most interesting was the tissue heart valves. They're implantable valves and they're made of both tissue from either cows or pigs and fabric like Dacron. And they're sewed to either plastic or metal scaffolding. And the project I was working on was a valve that was in sort of a stent type of wire mesh, and it would crush down and be delivered. There would be a balloon inside it, and then it would be delivered through the femoral artery and then up into the heart. And then you would inflate the balloon and it would open up the mesh and then stick inside the heart valve and replace the current heart valve.
Wow. That's really amazing to hear.
Complex.
Thank
So another question was, someone asked, does Erin use her art in her engineering?
I do. Sometimes it's much faster for me to hand draw a sketch for an idea or an invention than it is to actually, do it in CAD. So hand drawing of ideas. I definitely, if there's a lot of information to communicate to another department or a customer or a vendor, then I really like to put together a nice PowerPoint. I can get pretty creative with a spreadsheet too.
So our next question, it also comes from an anonymous attendee. And I know you kind of touched on this, but they're asking, in your experience, how do you see science/STEM to be creative?
Well, I think the problem-solving process applies to every area of our lives, and that is a creative process. Whether you're a scientist forming a hypothesis, I mean, that's a creative process. Whether you're an engineer solving a technical problem, I mean, the creative part that I talked about before is opening up your mind to possibilities and then generating ideas. And it's really fun to do with other people if there's trust and open communication, because one idea builds on another. And honestly, this amazing synergy builds. And you can generate better ideas together than you would in isolation. But so definitely, I think there's room for that problem-solving creative process in both science and engineering.
Perfect. Okay, so for our next question, another anonymous attendee asks, what kind of art skills that you have, or maybe that you've developed prior, influenced your growth in your STEM career?
Oh, that's a great one. Drawing for sure. So I went to school long enough ago. I think I mentioned I was a freshman in college in 1994, and that was for mechanical engineering. And one of our classes early on was drafting by hand. So long time ago, before the computers we have now, everything was drafted by hand, and those draftsmen were just amazing. Like, just their fine motor skills and then their ability to translate ideas to paper. So that really, my ability to draw finely was refined even more by those classes. And then this was really fun. In those classes, you have to learn to see in 3 dimensions. So they're like puzzles. Like, you see an object and they ask you to draw the right side, the top side, the bottom side, and then an isometric. So definitely having to work in mechanical engineering has honed my 3-dimensional visualization skills.
Just really quickly, before we move on to the next question, I just want to ask, do you prefer traditional or digital art?
Oh, you mean, I don't want to offend anyone. I love
all types of art? Okay.
I like to create traditional art.
Perfect. Okay, cool.
Okay, so our next question comes from Livy, and she says, "I lose myself in music to let myself be who I want to be. Do you
Mhm.
listen to a certain type of music to help focus and express yourself?"
Mm. It's interesting. I have different music for doing math problems and analytical work, and I have different music for being creative and painting. And sometimes all music just makes me angry and I can't listen to it at all. But I too get lost in music, and I'm really picky about finding music that goes with my brain waves for whatever activity I'm doing at that time.
All right. So Mrs. Clark asked, "Are you ever going to come out to California again?"
Of course I am. I miss you so much.
Okay, our next question. Oh my gosh, I really empathize with this question. So, an anonymous attendee is asking, "How do you get into art if you're good at STEM but bad at art?"
Oh, take a class, take as many classes as you want, and don't be afraid. I did not grow as an artist until I got rid of my fear of failing, my fear of drawing something ugly. The more you do it, the more you will learn the language, like I mentioned, just like lifting weights or running, you get into that shape, like that fitness. So draw every single day. It can be ugly, and seek out teachers, because it really helps to have someone nurture you. And don't release that inner censor, that inner judge, and just do it. Honestly, don't stress about it, just do it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, I guess kind of like how you mentioned taking an art class. Is there an art class you recommend to beginners, or like a specific type of style?
I would recommend just a basic drawing class, because you're really going to learn. You're going to do a lot of drawing, and it's not all going to be pretty, and you'll find out that you don't have to stop just because you made an ugly drawing. You just keep going. I still make ugly drawings. I mean, I did a self-portrait this week, and it's hideous. I put it on Instagram, but just like snapshots, parts that I liked, because I didn't want to show the whole face. I think there's just something that good for your soul about creating and continuing and not giving up on that.
Definitely. I think that's something really cool about drawing and art in general, is that you can see your improvements as you go. So I really love that part.
Mhm.
All right. Now, I actually really like this question that someone asked. An anonymous attendee asked, "Do you like Studio Ghibli movies? What is your favorite?"
Oh no, I don't know what that means.
Okay, so Studio Ghibli is actually a Japanese animation studio, and they do really interesting 2D films.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm such a fan of like
Uh,
almost all of their
Okay.
works. Are really
Let me
famous.
write it down, because I
You'll
would
have
love.
to. Personally, my favorite Ghibli film is Howl's Moving Castle, and I'll
Oh my
Oh
gosh, that
yes,
one is so
that
good.
that's on my list, but I know I've seen previews. Beautiful. Just
such a wonderful film. Oh my goodness.
yes.
You left
Okay.
me to talk about it, I would talk about it forever.
Thank you for reminding me to see it. And that wasn't Spirited Away is one of
Oh,
those.
Spirited Away, so good.
Okay.
All right.
Honestly, I feel like you can never miss with animation studio. Okay, so our next question is, do you express yourself by doing art and or engineering or science?
Like, does one help me express myself better than another?
I think yes, that's what they're asking.
Okay. This will sound a little self-absorbed. I have many, many, many facets. Everybody does, but I know I recognize mine, and each of those allows me to express a different facet. So when I'm doing one, I feel fully expressive of that aspect of my being. And I'm so grateful. Like, I'm so grateful that I found engineering. I'm so grateful that I found art. I got to be a scientist during my graduate work, and I wish I got to do more of that because I love exploring and investigating and analyzing data. So I'm pretty passionate about all of them.
Now, our last question actually asks for Erin's Instagram, which once we conclude, I'll be sending it in the chat, so you guys will get all of her information. Don't worry about that. All right.
Okay, so I believe that is our last question. So with that, we can conclude our audience Q&A round. Thank you so much, Erin, for all of your answers and insight. I think that's really beneficial and useful to all of us who are listening. And before we finish for the day, we would like to announce a scholarship opportunity. Let me share my screen for it. Okay, so this scholarship essay contest is called the Femme4STEM Essay Contest, and you can win a $250 prize, which I think is pretty good. So I mentioned this part in the introduction, and we wanted to kind of create a tangible means of supporting the endeavors of students that come to Femme4STEM. So we've organized an essay contest with a monetary prize, and there will be one winner, $250 prize, like I mentioned before. So what you have to do to enter this scholarship competition is you have to write an essay addressing one of the two prompts that I'll read in a little bit. And the most important thing is to make sure you bring your most articulate self-expression to the table and really express yourself and show how you love STEM. So eligibility, only female or female identifying students may apply, and you must attend 2 of the 5 Femme4STEM webinars throughout the week to enter this scholarship. And please be willing to receive the prize money in a cash or check form if you're selected. So the instructions are to answer one of the following prompts in essay format. And like I said before, please highlight your individuality and personal connection to STEM. That'll really help us kind of understand who you are and why you love STEM. So the essay prompts are, number 1, what STEM field is your favorite and how has it impacted you? How would you use it to change the world? And then our second prompt is, why is decreasing the gender gap in STEM fields important and how would you do so? So make sure you answer these prompts, one of these prompts, in 350 to 500 words. And the deadline for this scholarship is March 12th. So please make sure you email or share your essays with notified people selected to me using this email address. And the timeline, today we announced the scholarship event. And next Friday, March 12th, the event will end. So make sure to have your essays in by then. And then we will be announcing the winner on Monday, March 15th. So please enter. We would love to hear your insight and experience with STEM.
Ignore in the instructions where it said fill in the sign-in form. We did not make a sign-in form. So we will take your word for the fact that you attended at least 2 webinars. But to close day 2, I just want to thank Erin sincerely for taking the time to attend as a panelist. Everyone who showed up today, thank you again, especially if you showed up to yesterday's webinar as well. Right now, Kayla will be releasing the brown bag lunch form, so you can get your attendance put in through there in order to get extra credit for certain teachers. Our panelists' email will be put in the chat as well as her Instagram. If you'd like to contact them with personal questions or comments, as well as take a look at Erin's art, tomorrow we'll be discussing the topic of equalizing STEM education with Sarisha Pulapati and Veena Kadidal. So do tune in at the same time. It'll be at 5 p.m. just like today and yesterday. Kayla will be posting the link and the Zoom ID in the chat right now, but it's also on the flyer that we've been pushing like crazy. So once again, I just want to thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you not only tomorrow, but also enter in the contest.
Yes,
so,
for sure.
We were really excited to put together something for you guys and just kind of bolster the project that much more. So we really hope you guys can participate. And if there's any other questions or comments, I think we are good. So I'll just wait about a minute for people to get the information that we sent in the chat, and then I will end the webinar. Again, thank you, Erin. I really appreciated it. And
Thank you so much.
I feel like we had a little bit of a heart-to-heart.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it was really fun. Thank you.